Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, starring Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Antonio Banderas, John Rhys Davies, Toby Jones, Boyd Holbrook, Ethan Isistor, forgive me if I said that wrong, Karen Allen, and Mads Mikkelsen, and directed by James Mangold. Now, this movie is not performing very well. I think part of it has to do with the fact that Harrison Ford is pretty much getting up there. But I did see the movie twice. The first time was a reactionary audience when there was the appropriate time, and the second time I went was just a quieter audience at best, and it was pretty mellow. So let's see if this is worth the journey of the whole Indiana Jones retrospective series. Let's get into it. We started in 1944, excuse me, I meant 1944, and a young Indiana Jones, returned by Harrison Ford, is on a mission with his friend Basil Shaw, played by Toby Jones, who hides in the bushes, and Indy gets captured by the Nazis and is interrogated by Colonel Weber, played by Thomas Kretschmann, while Dr. Voller, played by Mads Mikkelsen, interrupts as he's led to believe is Hitler and is going to lose the war. And they tried to kill Indy by hanging him until a missile comes in and Indy gets free. And Weber goes on the train as they find Basil and bring him on board to ask about Indy. And this feels kind of weird because I first became aware of Toby Jones in Captain America the First Avenger, where he played a Nazi in that movie, whereas here he's fighting the Nazis, which felt odd to me. Indy gets to the train by motorcycle, and as I'm hearing these punches, I realize this is not the same movie as the other movies where Spielberg made the sounds for the punches, but here it's James Mangold who directed the last two Wolverine films as well as Ford versus Ferrari. So I didn't mind it as a different movie compared to the other movies, as Spielberg was done after Last Crusade, because remember, he didn't want to make Crystal Skull. Meanwhile, Hitler is going to receive a Dial of Destiny that is, it turns out, is a fake. While Basil tries to escape and overhears Hitler would have been a god if he had the dial, and Indy sits with the Germans briefly while hiding from the colonel and does find Basil as well as his hat and whip and knocks out Dr. Voller. And Basil grabs the dial, and Indy wants to take it with them, getting on top of the train, and the colonel stops them while they duck as they go through a tunnel. And when they get back out, the colonel does fight Indy as he tells Basil to shoot the colonel, and he does, but misses, and Indy kicks him down, and Dr. Voller gets knocked off, and they jump into the river, as this is the longest prologue I've seen since Crystal Skull, as this sequence is about 20 minutes long, as this is a long movie for an Indiana Jones movie by 30 minutes, as that could have been in the editing room, in my opinion. We move on to an older man of Indy in 1969, as he has an obnoxious neighbor named Larry, as he has to get up for work while it's Moon Day. And is that supposed to be a holiday? And we see a photo of Marion Ravenwood, returned briefly by Karen Allen. I'll get there at the end, but as he covers her face and he walks to the university to teach an archaeology, not the same university, by the way, to teach an archaeology lesson and puts it in the test. And these students, I feel like, don't want to be there at all. And that is some rude students he has. While Helena Shaw, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, was there while Indy is retiring, as they wanted to watch the Moon Story. And it was funny when he gives a homeless man a clock for his retirement gift. And these first scenes are kind of dumb, in my opinion. And Helena is someone I just don't like, as she's up to one of the bad things about. She's up to one bad thing after another, while Dr. Voller disguised his name as Dr. Schmidt. And with him is Hauk, played by Olivier Richters, and Klauber, played by Boyd Holbrook, who comes off very unlikable anyways. And Indy is just okay as in this movie as a character. Helena wants Indy to help find the dial, while a CIA agent named Mason, played by Shawnette Renee Wilson, wants Helena for criminal record reasons, while Indy shows her where the dial is at. And when the agents and Nazis come in the university, Clobber and Hauk kill a couple of staff members, like the principal, for example. And Helena takes the dial and ditches Indy for her escape, and she gets away while Indy gets briefly captured by the Nazis. And the CIA takes him with them, and they bump into a parade of hippies saying no to war. And Indy escapes and goes through a patriotic parade as he's riding a horse. And Hulk gets in a car with the woman who can't stop screaming. I was like, oh my god, with the screaming. And as they encounter Indy, he goes in the train station with the horse to get away from the Nazis as well as the CIA. And thank God the horse didn't get killed by the subway. And this sequence was kind of dumb too. While the cinematography doesn't look the same as the previous movies, but it follows history quite well. And the Indiana Jones series does a great job at one thing. It's the history which it makes these movies watchable. So I did like that. Someone calls out Indy, and Sala, returned by John Rhys Davies, is a friend presence for what little he does in this movie, as he says what I say at the end of every movie in this series: "Give them hell, Indiana Jones," at the airport, which is a line I do love, even said by John Rhys Davies. Indy is on the plane and remembers the past of Basil going crazy over the dial, while terrifying a young Helena as he promises to destroy the dial. And as we saw at one point in the movie, he didn't, which was a bad choice, and putting up a flashback line that is again a bad idea. Indy arrives to Tangier in a bar just in time for Helena to perform an auction, and Indy breaks in the auction, and Dr. Voller comes in, and everyone wants the dial, and this MacGuffin makes no damn sense. While Teddy, played by Ethan Isidore, I don't know if I'm saying that wrong, please forgive me, had it until Dr. Voller takes it away, and Indy and Helena get encountered by her ex-boyfriend, who is like a warlord. And this movie is after the MacGuffin that doesn't make a lick of sense. Indy gets in a vehicle with Helena and Teddy and go after the doll, and I was confused for half the movie what that MacGuffin was, as I was calling it a dial for the rest of the show. And this chase sequence is ridiculous, as Helena and Teddy get in a very different vehicle, and Indy does catch up and eventually gets in their vehicle, as this isn't as exciting as the previous movies, but it's more exciting than Crystal Skull. But so far, I'm not having as bad a time as I did with Crystal Skull, but it's not as fun as the first three movies, in my opinion. Dr. Voller, Clabber, and Hauk get to the CIA kill, revealing his name to Mason, which I knew it was him, while Indy and Helena go back and forth until they get on a train to Athens, Greece. And I did like we get to the maps on screen on how we get to Athens, which was fine. They get on a boat with Indy's old friend Captain Ronaldo, played by a very unrecognizable Antonio Banderas. And this isn't a character I remember from the previous movies, right? But I like seeing Antonio Banderas in movies like Zorro, Puss in Boots, and so many movies he's in, as he's always a great presence. Indy tells Helena what happened with Mutt as he goes to war to piss Indy off. Remember Mutt from the fourth movie? Well, played by Shia LaBeouf? Well, guess what? I try not to. And how he got divorced by Marion, which made me feel bad for Indy for his last reasons. And I like that they find a way to get rid of Mutt, because he was one of the weakest things about the last movie. Ronaldo helps Indy and Helena dive into the ocean, while Teddy watches their backs as Indy, Helena, and Ronaldo find eels. They find eels that almost kill off Indy, as well as a treasure chest with a map of the Code of Destiny. And Indy and Helena get captured by the Nazis and Ronaldo's crew, as well as Ronaldo himself getting killed by the Nazis. And now the rest of the movie is going to be bad without Antonio Banderas being around for the rest of the movie. I like the guy, come on. Helena tells the Nazis some riddles to get to the Dial of Destiny as Indy, Helena, and Teddy escape from, and the Nazis follow their movements. And Indy realizes the dial is too heavy and thinks about burning part of it to reveal a map of the Dial of Destiny. As they get to Syracuse, Sicily, and Indy gets some rope and other things like a backpack to begin with, and Teddy steals money for ice cream and bumps into the Nazis, while Indy and Helena find Teddy was captured by those damn Nazis, and they track them in a cave with echoes, and they climb, and Syracuse does look fine in this movie, but this is taking a little too long. And the cave scene, it was interesting, but not too interesting, as that was also taking a bit too long. For example, the cockroaches and other kinds of bugs climbing on them, and find Athena, goddess of war, and get into the pool in order to open the door. And Harrison Ford is getting up there in years, as this is a good time to retire the character of Indiana Jones. Teddy almost escapes, but Clabber handcuffs him with Houck, while Teddy does get away with suffocating Houck underwater as he escapes the handcuffs him to death, and he handcuffs Houck to his death, which was a clever choice. They find another piece of the dial of death, and the Nazis come in, and Dr. Voller takes the piece of dial and completes it, and Teddy comes in while Clabber shoots Indy, and Dr. Voller takes him on their plane as Helena and Teddy take a motorcycle to the plane and get there after the Nazis. And it was frustrating how they kept getting it back and forth, and it was kind of bothering me. The Nazis get on their plane, as does Helena, following behind them, so she can rescue Indy from the Nazis, while Teddy flies a plane with the captain inside, and they all go through the Dial of Destiny, and Voller wants to keep going towards it as he realizes the plane is going to get destroyed, and Voller goes way too far as they get there 2,000 years in Syracuse in the year 214 BC. And this is the part where the movie gets dense for me. The Nazis and Teddy, with the captain, get in 214 BC as the soldiers there fire at their plane, leading to believe it's a dragon, while Helena gets some Nazis off the plane, and Clauser shoots at the villagers. And 214 BC, as Indy and Helena, fight off Dr. Voller, and the Nazis get smashed in the plane as Indy and Helena parachute their way down, and they land there, and Indy wants to stay in 214 BC as the villagers find the dial and give it back to Indy and Helena. Meanwhile, Indy and Helena argue about Indy wanting to stay there, while Helena punches him out, and we move on to Indy's home without questioning how they got back to Indy's home to begin with. And Helena is there, and Marion comes in. Remember her, guys, from the original and that god-awful fourth movie? With Teddy with some groceries, and Sala and his family enter Indy's apartment, as well as the kids as well. And Helena, Sala, and Teddy all go out for ice cream, and Indy and Marion talk, and he kisses as they kiss where she was hurt, like they did in Raiders of the Lost Ark, as Helena, Teddy, Sala, and the kids go and get ice cream, and Indy grabs his hat, and that ending of a series was a happy ending, but it didn't make me as happy, despite Harrison Ford is now going to be to play Thunderbolt Ross, aka the Red Hulk, in the MCU, as he's getting up there in years. Oh boy, he needs to retire from action movies. But I did like that callback from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I was completely thrown off by the climax in being at 214 BC. And at the end of the day, I kind of didn't like the way the movie turned out, and I'll explain why in the rating. I'll give this movie a 4.6 out of 10. It's entertaining and fun, but not as entertaining and fun as the first three movies, but more fun than Crystal Skull. But unfortunately, it doesn't make it as a good movie. While I like a couple of the characters, like Sala, Antonio Banderas is fun to watch in any movie he's in, and Indy is fine, but the other characters I don't like too much. The cinematography wasn't as good as the previous movies, and the action sequences weren't the best things about the movie, as Harrison Ford is getting up there in years, as he did sign in the MCU to play Thunderbolt Ross, aka Red Hulk. Oh boy, I'm afraid to see how that goes, as they do come up with some clever things to get away with. And there are things I like in the movie, like the history is accurate, and that's why I liked about the series. But most of it is not in this movie. The going after the dial as a MacGuffin made no damn sense, as the movie is 30 minutes too long, as it felt like it kind of dragged in part of it, and it was the first 20 minutes that did take a tad bit too long, and at the end of the day, it's a mild non-recommendation, as this is a better movie than Crystal Skull, but not as good as the first three movies. I would have preferred to go 1 through 3 and then just never watch any more. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this Indiana Jones retrospective. And until, I don't think we'll ever do that again, but we'll see. Give 'em hell, Indiana Jones!